been on a great adventure. I think it's been great. We started with Adam, and we discovered the serpent didn't have a leg to stand on. And we've looked at Noah. Who built the ark? Noah, Noah. I know you were singing that in your head. And then we looked at Abraham, an old man and an old woman having a young baby. And some of y'all live that. It's a whole lot of fun. And then we talked about Moses and obedience. And now we're going to talk about King David and the Davidic Covenant. And what you see is that in Genesis, there's a lot of covenants. Then Exodus, and that's kind of staying in the epoch of history, a little 400 or 500 year lapse there. And then all these years later, you get King David. And David was a man after God's own heart. In 1 Samuel 13, I think it's 13, maybe 14, check me out. But he says, and the Spirit of God dwelled on David from that day forward. David had the permanent indwelling of the Holy Spirit. Because David had the permanent indwelling of the Holy Spirit, God looked at him and said, he's a man after my own heart. Now, people think David was a man after God's own heart because of his psalm writing, because of his being spiritually obedient, by him being perfect. David was none of those things. Yeah, he wrote psalms, and yeah, he obeyed God, he believed God. And he also, but David also murdered some dude and had an affair with his wife. David wasn't exactly the poster child of righteousness. David was a man after God's own heart because the Spirit of God dwelt in David. And you're a man or a woman after God's own heart because the Spirit of God lives in the heart of the redeemed. That's what makes you a person after God's own heart, not your external devotion or obedience or the things we observe in the eye. It's the internal commitment of the Holy God through the scarlet thread of redemption that's taken your brokenness, filled it with His love and His redemption. That makes you a man after God's own heart, or woman. So just chase that. But what I want to talk to you about is the legacy of David in the Davidic Covenant. And God said to David, there'll be an ancestor, a descendant of yours, he'll sit on your throne forever and ever and ever. And God was looking forward to the promise of King Jesus, who came from the house and the lineage of David. The one born of woman, not with the action of man, but the action of God. The offspring of woman, who would be the kinsman redeemer, would be the one. And he comes from the house of David. If you trace the lineage of Mary and Joseph, Joseph had nothing to do with the birth of Jesus, had everything to do with the raising of Jesus as his earthly father, his stepfather, as it were. But Mary's lineage goes through David as well. David is in Joseph's lineage and in Mary's lineage. David the king, Mary comes from a priestly line, so Jesus is the king priest, the high kingly priest. It says that in Hebrews. So, but what I want to talk to you today about is something pretty basic. That you look at this, and I want to talk to you about the power of legacy or the power of blessing. That in the covenant promise, God gives you some promises for you to extend. And I want to talk about 5 ways that you can bless people around you. Because God blessed David, and He's blessed us through the covenants, how you can then bless others. And here's the 5 things that I want you to consider. The way you bless people is intentionally because you've been blessed by God. God does these 5 things for us, and He wants to do those 5 things through you to others. And the first way you bless people is through touch. Meaningful touch, significant touch, not creepy touch, but blessing touch. Laying your hands on someone, hugging them, greeting one another with the holy kiss. And that's the power of the blessing, the power of touch. Touching your children, touching your spouse, touching each other in appropriate, loving, giving the power of the blessing. The second thing is words of affirmation, words that close the loop. Do you know that you could show actions of love, but till you speak the words of love, it doesn't close the loop between the heart and the head? It's like these lights that are shining on me. The reason there's a light is because there's a filament that closes the loop and produces the light. That's exactly what words do. I had a guy once said this to his wife. I told you I love you when I married you. If I change my mind, I'll tell you different. You know what that's called? Excuse me. It's called ignorance. It's called ignorance. You have to speak words of blessing. David spoke words of blessing over his son. God spoke words of blessing over David. And we learn because God speaks His words of blessing over us. And then there's a positive future. God projecting a positive future in your life. That he's saying to you, I'm going to be with you. I'm never going to give up on you. And when we say that to the ones we love, when we say I'm committed to you, then it gives you a positive future. And that's that future that God's going to be with you. And then there's commitment. That not only am I projecting a positive future for you, that God's going to be with you, that I'm going to be with you as well. That I'm going to go with you. I say this all the time to my friends. Hey, I love you until I'm dead. After that, you're on your own. Now, that sounds a little silly, but that's true. That's saying I'm committed to you. And the lastly is security. That I want to give and be a person who gives security. Now, I want you to look at those 5 things. Let me go over again. Touch, words, future, commitment, and unconditional security. This is exactly what Jesus does for you in the covenant promises. In David, he said, I'm giving you these 5 things. In Jesus, he said, I'm giving you these 5 things. Now, if we became a people of blessing that we're touching, speaking, projecting, committing, and securing, then we become a people of transformation. We become people that have been transformed because this is what God does for us. This is what the redemption story is all about. God taking us, the rebel race, through the scarlet thread of redemption and weaving us together, knitting our souls into a family. And families bless one another. David's family blessed us through King Jesus. And King Jesus blesses us, and we're drawn in to the covering and the blessing of God in the scarlet thread. And you will bruise his heel, and he will bruise your head. King Jesus defeated Satan that we might be the blessed of God and enjoy the bliss of God. How are you displaying these 5 elements of the blessing in your group? How are you expressing to your family? How can we do that as a church? And what do we have to do intentionally? So have a great discussion. I hope this helps. Next week, I'm going to ask you to party because we're going to celebrate King Jesus at Easter, the final of the covenant. But the covenant goes on as we live in the promised covenant of the Church of Jesus Christ. So next week, party with purpose, have some fun, eat some barbecue on me. I hope you've had a great time because I've had a great time talking to you. So I hope this helps. God bless you.